Today I'm featuring Moira Khan, a certified grief educator and founder of GriefSpan, a supportive community for individuals navigating loss. Moira has dedicated her work for helping people understand and process grief with compassion and practical tools. She offers guidance on managing the complex emotions that come with loss and encourages self-care throughout the healing journey. Her approach emphasizes that grief is natural and that seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness. In this interview, Moira shares insights, strategies, and hope to anyone experiencing the challenges of grief. Hi, Moira. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it for you joining me here on this video on Two Healing Minds.
Thank you so much for having me, Tanya. This is such a privilege, and I always feel so honored to be part of something that you hold space for on these types of podcasts, and I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's great to be able to have an amazing grief coach because this is a topic that needs to be shared more often.
I agree.
And you having your work that you do on, is it for GriefSpan?
hmm It is.
Okay, and
Yeah,
thank you for starting that service for everyone.
you're welcome. Thank you.
And to start off, I think actually the best way to start off is it's always interesting to know people's intentions or how they started their work, their
hmm
practices. So if you could please share your own grief journey. And
Sure. Yeah, it's I'm not going to lie, mine's a slightly complicated one in the sense of that I've had many losses. So mine's a multiple loss journey. So if anybody that's listening that relates to that, I think it's so important what you just said before to be able to share these things, and it's why I'm doing what I do now. So to start my story is going back to 2014 when I lost my mum. And so, just to give you a bit of background, I am from New Zealand originally, and that's where I was born and raised to actually English parents. And my parents immigrated to New Zealand in the 60s. And so that was my life, that was my upbringing, and New Zealand was my home for 29 years until I moved overseas. And so my mum was a big part of my life purely because, in the sense of that, she was a stay-at-home mum, but she had always struggled with rheumatoid arthritis. And so all I knew throughout my childhood was my mum suffering with this pain and ongoing drug intake to manage the pain so that she could deal with day-to-day life. And so I guess for me, it was normal. And, um, my we had a fairly normal life. My dad was, at work 9 to 5 every day out the house. I had a
mhm.
brother. He was 7 years older, my brother, but we had a fairly normal upbringing as far as I was concerned. It was simple but happy and lovely and very basic in the terms of that New Zealand is such a beautiful place to be brought up. And
Mhm.
I guess I just accepted the fact that my mum wasn't as active as some mums. She wasn't able to do things like stand on the sidelines with sports days
Mhm.
or that kind of thing, just, give you an example. So I kind of just accepted it, and that's all I knew. So to cut a long story short, I moved to the UK in 2007
Mhm.
as part of a big sort of overseas experience. And then I ended up staying there because I got a really good job and met my now husband there as well. My mum started to get ill in the August of 2014,
Okay.
and it was unexpected. She had had various different things over the years
Hmm.
prior to that, but nothing that would have said to me, go, okay, I need to go home. It's terminal. There was nothing like that. She got sick and got taken into hospital. What was equally as devastating at that time was only 2 weeks prior to that, we'd found out that we were pregnant and with our
Oh
first
boy.
baby.
Oh,
And we'd had quite a long sort of fertility journey to that point as well. So we'd struggled to get pregnant, and it was a bit of a, that was kind of a grief, if you like, as well, trying to get
yes.
pregnant.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yes.
as some of, your listeners may know, that, that's, and we all consider that a grief period in our lives too, if we, aren't able to get pregnant, or the journey that it takes us to get pregnant and those kind of things. So we'd
Oh,
struggled with that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've
Yeah.
heard, even though I don't have children, I've heard many stories from women sharing their infertility journeys. And of
Hmm.
course, and miscarriage journeys, that it's a grief in its own way
It is.
because it's, yes. So I can imagine
Hmm. Yeah.
that and the complications that your journey went through that. And at the
Hmm.
same time, as you mentioned, unexpected loss or passing of your mom.
Mm.
So I can imagine the immense
Yeah.
difficulty.
Yeah. It's not, you lose that joy in a sense of being pregnant. Like I felt like I only had that for 2 weeks, where, and then I had to jump on a plane to New Zealand from the UK
Mhm.
to basically watch my mum die. And that was just horrendous. Like I
Oh,
just couldn't, I just can't, still even to the day, I think I can't get my head around that.
oh
And
yeah.
so my whole pregnancy journey was, overshadowed by this experience of losing my mum, and all I wanted was my mum. And it's the first thing you ever want is, your first baby. You just expected your mum to be around. And so, but I was going through grief, and it was just, that was my journey. And I guess the nice thing I can take out of that experience, as devastating as it was, is the fact that I feel like mum sent me my daughter, in
Hmm.
place of her. And whether that be something that everyone believes in, that's, but it's my belief, that's my thinking. It just makes me feel a little bit better about the situation. And, for whatever, I was going through a very traumatic time of, during my pregnancy, of losing my mum, I did actually block it out in a sense. I kind of pushed my grief down for the whole pregnancy, just in order to get through it, to deal with, first time, being a mum first time, and going through all of this stuff that I needed to get to in order to, have my baby. And I literally just shut it away. And also, I had my father, who was semi-ailing at this point as well, having to look after him from a distance in New Zealand as well, grieving his wife of 50 years, and, having to deal with that at the same time. And so there were multiple pieces moving in this whole scenario. And I think it feels like a blur now. It
Hmm.
just, I don't know, even know how I got through it in that sense. I probably didn't, in a sense. I was, mixed emotions, various different things that took place after I had the baby as well. They doctors diagnosed me with postnatal depression, but I honestly think it was a lot of grief.
Yes.
And I was quite depressed after my daughter was born. So it was a combination of everything, I think. And, my mum never getting to see my first baby born or be there. And yeah, so that was devastating. So that was in 2014. And in 2017, my brother died suddenly, um, which was a complete shock, although he had been ill, but not terminally ill. He had some heart complications, which he'd had some surgery for in 2016. And no, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Hmm.
He just died of a massive cardiac arrest, and he was gone. And I never got to say goodbye. I just got the phone call. And that was, again, another blow, being my only brother as well. And, so we're the only two, he was my only sibling. And here I am again. And also at that time, I had another baby.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was I was 6 weeks postpartum when my brother died. So here I am again going through this grief and not being able to just focus on being a mum again. It was all consuming of a grief experience again, losing another member of my family, and my only other family member left is my dad.
Mhm.
And he too is ailing, and I know that in reality he's not going to be around for much longer either, because
Mhm.
we'd had a diagnosis for him that was around neuropathy and ailing mobility and those kind of things. And so he was not far away from sort of ending his life journey as well. So it's getting to a point where things were, very, very traumatic for me, and grief was becoming a big part of my life. And
Mhm.
now I'm the only one left to sort of carry the childhood sort of name of our family, which, often doesn't get carried through with as a daughter. And in 2019, I actually managed to get home with two little ones. I traveled back to New Zealand knowing that it was probably the last time I would get to see my dad.
Mhm.
And he was being transferred from co-assisted living to palliative care. And I had to basically just go home and pack all of his things up. And that was I am the only one left, and that's, something I had to do. And I would never regret that, because it's, I owed him that much, that it was just a privilege to be able to go and see him one last time. And I was able to take the grandkids home to see him, even
Mhm.
though they won't remember it. They were very, very little. Um, but it's a nice memory to have, and for dad to have seen his grandchildren. So that was of the April, May 2019. And then of the December 24th, my dad was gone. And that was it.
Oh
So
my
my
goodness.
entire family's gone. And I actually couldn't get home at that point to even farewell my dad, because I just had major foot surgery. And I was planning to go of the following year in 2020. And then I probably think you can guess what happened next was that
Oh,
COVID
yes,
hit.
yes. Of
The
course,
whole
we all
country,
we
the
all
whole
know
world shut
that.
down. Yep. The whole world shut down, and New Zealand basically shut its borders as well. And that was it. I couldn't get in to see him, to say goodbye, do any of the estate stuff I needed to do, or even give him a farewell that he deserved. So, yeah, that was complicated. So I was stuck in this limbo of grief all
Oh,
throughout lockdown. So yeah, it's not been a easy journey for sure, but we're talking, now we're sort of 7 years on from my last, well, around about 5 years on from my dad passing, almost 6 years. And yeah, it hasn't been easy, I have to say, but here I am.
but
And this is why I started Grief Span. So that's why I said it was a complicated story. So I'm sorry for the length of that.
no, not at all.
But
I'm glad
yeah,
you shared it. I mean, that is an extremely heavy, tremendous back-to-back loss and grief.
yeah.
And yeah, it's like I almost went teary-eyed when you were talking about your mom and everything. And I'm like, oh no, Tanya, this isn't the time to be crying right now,
Oh,
right? And so, yeah, that's totally understandable, what you've gone through. And what's hard to understand is maybe not with all people, but there are a lot of people that they go through unbearable back-to-back losses, as if grief just keeps showing up and you're
mhm.
thinking, not again. So, I mean, that happened to me, but I don't need to get into all the details, but I've went
No, but my
through,
heart goes out to you for your loss
yeah.
as well.
So
I,
I can
appreciate you have too.
understand, I understand what you're saying because you're thinking, why this person? Why now? I mean, I've just been through this grief. Like, give me a break. You're bringing
Hmm.
this other one to me. I remember those are the words that I was saying to myself. I was like saying, wait a minute. I have not even handled or been through this one. And you're presenting, I mean, just talking to them. This is called self-talk. And you're bringing this one. I mean, like, seriously, what's going
Yeah.
on here?
Yeah.
And as a grief coach, because I know there's people that, that are listening, that they're thinking, me too, I went through back-to-back losses also.
Mm.
Like, how do you help someone who feels like completely consumed by that?
It's a it's a process and a very um it's a very time consuming journey, and everyone's is different,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And when losses pile up like that, um it can quite often feel like there's no room to breathe in between them. And I think people are so hard on themselves when it comes to loss, and they think that they should just be, oh, I'll get on with life and it's okay. And, but they downplay the fact that they have not, they may have only just lost one, but if they've lost multiple people in their lives, it's no, it is, we shouldn't downplay it. There
Mm-hmm.
is, I often remind people that grief isn't something you get over. There is no way that you ever get over it. And it's an eternity thing that we carry throughout our lives. And it's something you learn to carry. But when someone feels completely consumed, we focus on creating, just small moments of safety for ourselves, grounding ourselves in different rituals that we might, you know, take on for ourselves, like
Mm-hmm.
exercise, like journaling. Um, when you feel that overconsumed emotion when it comes to grief triggers and grief emotions. And just to give you an example, I had one even in the weekend where and you think that 10 years on, since my mum died anyway, that
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't affect you that much, but it does. And that's the reality of it. It can be the smallest thing. And this is just an example. On the weekend I was with friends and we were relaxing, outside having lunch in their garden. And then the kids started raking leaves in the garden because they were helping out, doing something fun like that, that was not normal for them.
Uh-huh.
And then all I got was this image of me doing that with my dad when I was that age. And it just transported me back to that time, and it gave me
Mm-hmm.
a real jolt of, oh my goodness, why can't my kids have this with their granddad? Why can't, I can share this memory with them, but it just sent me back, which is a lovely memory,
Yes.
but it's one of those triggers. The songs in the supermarket, the radio in the car, all of those things that give us little triggers that when we least expect it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when we're working on pain, sometimes it's just a matter of sitting with that pain and, you know, sharing also helps as well. And that's the biggest thing that, consumed by grief is a reality that we have to deal with when we're in grief. And that's painful as it is. It's taken me years to get to a point where I accept that now, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a journey and you won't necessarily get there at a set time, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean that absolutely makes a lot of sense, and it's true. People when they're going through grief, or even I can't say that there is no end date to grief. It's something you
Mm.
carry with you your entire life. And I feel like the reason why you carry it is because there's that love and bond with that person. And why should you forget? And mentioning triggers is so true because they do come at unexpected times and in
Yeah.
unexpected places, and you never know what it's going to be. So they
Mhm.
are little surprises. I mean, I feel like you can go maybe months, then all of a sudden one day you're getting teary eyed and you're thinking, hey, why am I getting teary eyed again? I
Yeah.
haven't cried for months now. But it's those experiences, it
Mhm.
can be any of your senses that you're using, your sense, hearing, smell, something that
Yeah.
connects you to that love you had with that
Mhm.
person, even
Yeah.
though, as you said, it's supposed to be a good memory. But somehow we take that good memory and we connect it to the present moment, I feel. And then we
Yeah.
get a little bit more soft or sensitive. And then you start thinking of like, oh, why isn't this person here now? Or why do I have
Mm,
to do this alone? Or why can't I give the advice from, yeah. So
yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you shared that example. It
Yeah.
is so important. And that's another thing I feel like grief is the most intense when it involves somebody that we're deeply close to.
Hmm.
And the reason why I bring up this question is when I was going through my grief journey and I had someone sharing a similar grief, it could be about their mom. This is a friend that a former friend. When he
Hmm.
said, "Oh, I got over it over a day." I know comparisons aren't good. I know. I was like thinking, you got to be kidding. That's crazy.
Mm,
But there was that big but. It's because the person wasn't close to the mom or shared experiences or spend a lot of time as I
hmm.
was. So you don't
Yeah.
compare yours to someone else is because in reality they weren't close to the person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why the grief is more intense the closer you are. If you see the people that are like going, gosh, they got over it, maybe they weren't as close or
Mm,
bonded with. I don't know if that's true. That's just something that I'm thinking of.
yeah.
And
I
and
think
like so,
sometimes people put up a big front though as well.
oh,
And
you
that's
think so?
the
Okay.
that is one of my observations when I'm talking to clients is that
Oh,
they have especially, and I don't mean to generalize here at all, but men generally do put up a more of a front than women.
okay.
And that may not be for, every male case, but I'm just, from an observation point of view in my space, men do put up an extra front just because they want to be seen to be dealing with it, or and that's okay. But they may not be actually dealing with it deep
Okay.
down, and it may be coming out in other ways or in other areas of their life, or even though they had no real close connection with that person, and that it may come out in other ways later, if they haven't dealt with it. And that's just an observation from my perspective and my professional opinion. But yeah, that's just one thing to think about anyway. But it can, and like, you say joy, comparison is the thief of joy. And it is in a sense of when you're going through grief, it's still the same. If you're comparing yourself to someone else, you think, oh, why shouldn't I, why am I not okay like that person? Or how are they doing so well? And a lot of people give me that, ask me that question a lot. They say, how on earth have you got to a point where you are a grief coach, you're helping others through their grief
Mhm.
and moved through it to this point. And I said, yeah, but that's my journey. That's my journey. And that's, solely my process. And it's taken years to get to this point. And I'm still not okay.
Mhm.
I don't sugarcoat it. I'm still not okay. Just because I'm a grief coach doesn't mean that
Yes.
every day is rosy. It's not.
You're
I
still
have my down
human.
days.
You're
Yeah,
still
exactly.
human.
We're all human.
Yes.
It's about how we present it, how we process it, how we deal with it, and how we project it in other ways in our life. And that's a big part of it.
Yes, and actually I'm glad it sounded like an odd question, but I'm glad I brought it up because you did make
Yeah.
an excellent point. Yes, there can be gender differences. Like males might be more ashamed to show emotion. They might want to show that, like, oh, I can toughen up. Oh, I got over it. Yes, I can see that now because that former example was from a male. And so you're so right. Like they want to show that, no, no, you know,
Yeah. I mean,
I,
I hope that's
it
changing
makes
over
a
the time.
difference,
Yeah,
gender
I hope
differences.
it does. I hope that's changing as a result of social media. And what we try to do now is obviously encourage males to speak more openly about these things, because I know it's a historical thing of, we can't share our emotions, we can't share our feelings. But hopefully it's changing little by little. It might take a while, but yeah, I hope it's changing over time.
Okay, so that would be definitely different change. And hmm, so how can someone, I know these are all challenging questions, there's just
No,
so
it's
much.
fine.
But
It's
again,
all
it's
good.
against grief conversations are important to have, and sometimes it's limited.
Hmm.
I don't know, it's not out there as much. So someone, so this is another, it's not only grieving the person that's lost, it's grieving the people that don't show up. Maybe they
Mm,
disappeared during your grief moment. They decided, well, I don't want to be present, or they minimized their pain. They sent a quick text
mm,
like, oh, sorry for your loss. And they just disappeared. You know, it can be a
yeah.
family member, a friend, whether they couldn't simply handle it or they just didn't want to be involved. They just decided, like, hey, I don't want this relationship, friendship, or I want to
Mm.
disconnect from this family member. So that adds an extra layer of hurt. I know that happened to me, unfortunately,
Oh, I'm sorry.
when I lost my mom, and then 2.5 months later, a boyfriend. So the bond. So I know I'm not the only one. I know this happens to people.
Hmm.
So how do they come in terms like, okay, I've had this loss, but now people that I
And
felt should be there weren't.
yeah, and it's very valid. That
Uh-huh.
that scenario is very valid and actually, unfortunately, very common. When you lose close members or of your friends group or even family, and it can be really painful in
Mm-hmm.
addition to what you're already going through because you thought, yeah, I think you have this picture in your head that as soon as I'm going through something really difficult like this, that person is going to be there. And then when they're not, and it's kind of another grief in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're going through a secondary loss in a sense, which can almost hurt as much as the original one, because you were expecting something and having an expectation
Mm-hmm.
of their reaction to your grief, and they didn't respond in the way that you would have hoped. And it's very hard to rationalize in that moment what that person might be going through and not knowing how to respond to you because you're not normal, as
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of that you're not the normal person that they know how to react to. And because quite often in grief, obviously we change, and that
Oh,
is,
absolutely.
I know I'm not the same person I was when before I lost my family. I know I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And so when other people in your life that have known you all your life or for a very significant period of time see this shift in you, whether it be good or bad, it's very hard, I think. And, just to give a little bit of credit to those ones that distance themselves, it can't be easy for them to know how to approach someone in grief if they haven't been through it themselves,
Mm-hmm.
especially. And I always think about that now. And I am guilty of, before I lost anybody, I probably not so much distance myself from people, but I just didn't know what to say either. And so I would either go around the subject or, you know, just maybe mention it here and there and different things, but not really go into any depth because I didn't know how to respond to it or I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to react to their reaction. And so coming to terms with, means accepting that, painful as it is, not everyone can walk us through this dark period of our time in our lives. But you can seek understanding from other people, and that's sometimes the little light that might come from all of this, is that you might find other people that have a similar situation or you encounter during your grief that do understand. And so eventually it doesn't seem like it at the time, but in the midst of all of this, something good may come out of your secondary loss as well. And that's, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, and actually it does. For some people, it may be like former friendships, former family members, and throughout their
Hmm.
healing journey, they realize, they weren't such a good person to have in my life anyway. That can be one conclusion
Mm,
when you kind of dissect it and you're going like, okay, because you might talk to other family members, other friends, because you always want to know
exactly.
the reasons. That can be the conclusion. And yeah, and as you said, everybody's grief journey is so personal.
Mhm.
It's so unique to themselves that
Yeah.
there is no way anyone else is going to understand. And it's just up to them. You can't change people. You can't make them more compassionate, more empathetic. And that's definitely something I learned. I, I don't know if you're a HSP, highly sensitive person. You always have to remind yourself you cannot change people's personalities. If they're a cold person to begin with, they're ones that they're not comfortable with empathy, or they might have their own issues, like their own problems that they're going
Hmm.
through or whatever. You cannot give people or show them how to show compassion. It should be something
Yeah.
natural. And you have to accept people. Not everyone has that.
No,
That's what I
they
say.
don't. It's reality. It is reality.
I'm
Yeah.
laughing. I'm laughing because it's so true. And it's something that I
Yeah.
learned because I'm the type of person I'm like, oh, this is just normal. It's human nature. Everybody's going to be kind, nice, soft, show their empathy. But then when I went through healing, it's like a rude awakening. No, no, Tanya, not everyone's like that. That's
Mm,
foolish. So, yes, just accepting how people are different
yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
And so now, while you're honoring, I know you probably go through different ways to honor your loved ones that have passed.
Hmm.
And it's something that's a deeply personal process. Everyone is going to have a different way. Is there maybe a few ways you can share
Hmm.
that somebody can use to implement it in their lives?
Yeah, of course. And, I'm continually learning as I go along as well. And, for the 2 years now that I've been a grief coach, it has helped me immensely because one of the things that, I encourage my clients to do is just talk about them, talk about their loved ones that they've lost, share their stories. I share stories of my parents almost on a daily basis to my kids because I think it's really important, and it keeps their memory alive.
Mm-hmm.
And, later down the track, the kids, and even now the kids come back to me and say, oh, I remember when you told me that grandma did this and granddad did this. And, and they love it when I share stories about their grandparents. And I think it's a big healing journey for yourself as well. The more you talk about them, the more you share their memory, you're keeping their legacy and their memory alive as well. And that's important because whatever you believe spiritually or religiously or whatever it might be that you think your loved ones have gone or where they've gone, it's still important to keep them alive in their next journey, in the sense of that, I don't know where my parents have gone, but I still believe that they are watching over me in some way or, shape or form. Um, and I think that's important. The other way I usually recommend is obviously journaling. It's not for everybody. I get that. I often ask my clients, I said, are you a writer? And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, not
Oh, yeah,
really, not
that's
really,
true.
never tried it. It's not everyone's thing. And I get
Yes.
that, but just give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of healing and a lot of things to be said about just scrolling on a page. It doesn't have to make sense. I don't know if you know about the morning pages, but it's
Yeah, I've
something,
heard of it.
yeah, from the artist's way. And it's a really therapeutic way of just dumping. And it might take a few times to get used to doing it, but it's worth persisting with because when you get to a point where you don't know what's going to come out, that's when you get the good stuff. And that's when there's a lot of healing that takes place as well. There's memories that come up because it's very, very true that the more you activate, talking about your loss, talking about your loved ones, new memories or the memories that you thought had gone, they
Mm-hmm.
reappear. And that is,
Yes.
I'm living proof of that. I have found that so many things for me have returned and memories have come back just because I've talked about them more. And
Mm-hmm.
my childhood, my mum and dad, their experiences, their stories, I share it all the time, and things just keep coming back. I haven't locked things away anymore, which is what I used to do, you know. And so yeah. So journaling, talking about them, and the other thing I would say, just living in alignment with what they taught you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be your parents or your sibling or whoever you had in your life that isn't with you anymore. I've got good friends that I've lost through death as well. And for example, I had a really lovely personal trainer that was very, very close to me and dear to my heart. And he died of a brain aneurysm in
Mhm.
2012. And, I still to this day practice a lot of the stuff that he put in place for me when I was training with him. And so I still remember him and I keep him alive in my memory by doing the stuff that he still taught me, and that's one of the ways. And so, and all of the practices that my dad and my mum taught me, and I pass them on to my kids, and just embodying their, what's the best word, essence, I guess you could say. And I think it's a beautiful tribute to them.
Mhm.
um, it's a good way of just keeping them alive and just honoring their memory. And I think, they would love to know that you're doing that. I would certainly, if I'm not here anymore, I would love to know that people are still, talking about things I did, or, in some ways finding what I did inspiring, and just, feeding off that. And it's just a nice way of just expressing your grief as well, and not carrying that burden all the time of just keeping it locked away, because it does
Mhm.
help if you express it and use, their memory and keeping them alive. So those would be my three main things, I think.
Yeah, those are great suggestions actually, and it's better than keeping it, instead of keeping it locked inside,
Hmm.
exposing it. I mean, whether it's to yourself or to others, that exposure of still keeping the closeness or the bond with the person.
Yeah.
And I love your number one for people that do have kids is sharing the stories with their kids.
Hmm.
Kind of like bedtime stories, except, the bedtime stories you're sharing your experiences, like in your case would be with your parents or with
Yeah.
any loved ones, and to kind of make that story for your kids. So they will remind you, it kind of keeps their presence, keeps them
Yeah.
alive
Yeah.
when they come up to you, or for any parent listening with a loss, they keep their memory alive because they will mention it to you at any
Yeah.
time. So it
Yeah.
makes them feel like their energetic presence. And morning pages, it's a good one. Unfortunately, mine didn't last because I think I learned that early on. I think it lasted maybe a month. You have to write it in the morning, and
Yeah.
I think it's just not being judgmental, just allowing your pen to just flow on the paper and just keep going and not knowing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, because it's funny you mentioned that it might be hard for some people, and all of a sudden I was frozen. It was hard for me. So
Yeah.
if anyone can find another creative outlet, if it's not
Absolutely. That's another
writing.
good one too. Like you say, like I used to find gardening absolutely therapeutic. During my deep grief, I really loved gardening. And that was something related to my mum as well, because I used to do a lot of gardening for her because she couldn't do it with her rheumatoid arthritis. So it kind of, I guess, that whole earthy thing with her kept me close to her. If I continued that on, then I felt like it was keeping me close to her and doing something that she loved. So yeah, there's lots of other ways for sure. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's a nice way to continue doing something. Like my dad, he used to, I haven't continued doing any of this, but he used to be, yeah, I'm very good at carpentry and that kind of stuff. So I haven't done that, but he was a
Oh.
good photographer as well. And so I've always done photography because of him, and,
Mhm.
those sorts of things. So yeah, there's lots of other ways that you can keep their memory alive as well.
Yes, and those are great suggestions. Just creativity, maybe just
Hmm.
brainstorm some ideas. And also for the last one is like okay, I'm sorry, can you mention the last one again? I was so into the first two that
Oh,
I
you mean
stumbled
this?
on number three.
Oh no, just living in alignment with them. Just basically doing what they taught you, whether it be
Oh.
kindness or, and you've already covered that too in terms of creativity. That kind of,
Mhm.
stems in from the first one as well. You know, um, Even humor. Things
Mhm.
like resilience, those kind of things. I feel like resilience is a big word at the moment.
Yes.
Um, and I feel like I've got, I wouldn't have got to the point where I am now or managed my grief nearly as well if my parents hadn't taught me to be resilient and independent, and I could have done so many things differently when it came to my grief. I could have been in a pool and a, completely messy mess and not got out of bed. And obviously, honestly, that is nothing wrong with that,
No.
because we all have to go through those stages.
Hmm.
And to be honest, there are many a day where I would want to have stayed in bed.
Oh,
But
yeah.
me personally, I just had to keep going. But everyone's different. And so if you are able to embody their essence in one of those, beautiful tributes by honoring them, I think it's just really special. And it makes you feel closer to them. And yeah, I really love that one.
Yes, I do too. And especially the example you gave about your personal trainer, that there's something that you have maybe learned from them, whether it's a
Hmm.
skill or a value, you carry that with you, and it's because of them. So that keeps
Yeah.
them alive within you. So I did love love the number three also. Ooh,
Yeah.
such a heavy topic. We each have to take a deep breath.
I know.
No. And so I know grief brings so many different emotions with it. There can be anger, there's depression, survivor's guilt, regret, resentment, shame. Those are just a few. So, how can somebody process all these layered emotions that are coming
Mm.
up in a healthy way? Because, obviously, there are some people that can, I mean, do things that are unhealthy and not very helpful to their healing.
Yeah. And obviously, everyone, again, we go back to that whole everyone deals with the situation differently. Some people, will turn to different vices. And, I'm not going to lie, alcohol was a big one for me at the beginning. I'm not going
Mm.
to sugarcoat it. It was my way of numbing what I
Hmm.
thought was the best way of dealing with it, because I was a new mum at the time too. I was thinking, hey, holy heck, I wasn't
Oh,
getting
yes.
drunk or anything. It was just the case that it became too frequent.
Hmm.
And
I get it. It's like
it was just,
medication.
yeah, it felt like that
Yes,
at the time.
like a
And
medication.
yeah, but if you don't do those things, if you can just stop those things for a bit to actually make yourself physically feel the emotion, then that's when you can allow yourself to, or give yourself permission more than a sense, to feel without judgment, or just feel, basically. You just have to sit with the emotion,
Hmm.
and it can be uncomfortable at
Oh,
first.
absolutely. Oh boy, can it? Oh boy,
Absolutely.
can it be if you've
Oh
been
my
through
goodness. I
it?
mean, let's
It's
just talk
it's
about the
like
uncomfortable.
torture.
Yeah,
All
let's just talk
right.
about the uncomfortableness for a while, because I don't think many people actually talk about this openly.
Can
It
I
is
say the word
really,
torture? I don't want to frighten
yeah,
people if they haven't been
no,
through it.
I don't think it
Some
is, because
days
it
can
feels
be
that
like,
way.
oh.
Yeah,
I'm like,
no, and it
ah.
is. It is. It's
Yes.
torture. Having to just sit with your emotions can be really scary, and very, it just brings up so many different things in some people, that you just can't deal with it. And that's very normal. That's very human. You know, we don't deal with these sorts of things every single day. So it's,
Hmm.
you go into this fight and flight mode when someone dies, and you just deal with whatever you've got to do with, the initial death. But then the funeral happens, and then that's it. You know, Everyone else goes away, they get on with their lives, that kind of stuff. But you're still stuck in this, what do I do now? They're gone. All of everything. I don't have anything else to do. I felt that way more so because it was 14 months after my dad died that I was able to get back to New Zealand when they opened up the borders again. And we're talking 14 months after he died. He'd
Hmm.
already been cremated, but I was able to get home, do all of the estate stuff, sign the final paperwork, close bank accounts, have his memorial service. And then I got home back to, where I live now. I live in Spain now, and my husband looked after our children for 2 months straight, so I could just go home and do what I needed to do for my dad. And then I got home, I felt like I started my grieving process all over again,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that was it for me. I had nothing else to do. The funeral was over. No one else really sort of had, checked in again, because that was it now.
Yes.
I'm sure, we just assume that people are just going to get on with their lives.
Hmm.
But there's all these phases that we go through, and, it's not to say that they're irrelevant, but, it doesn't happen linear. There is
No.
no linearity to, if that's a word, to to
Hmm.
any of this. So, I went through anger and guilt again after everything had finished. That sounds very, very final, but, I went through this falling apart again all over again for almost like a fourth time because I'd already lost my dad, but this was more so that I didn't have anything else left to do. There was no more estate stuff. There was no more packing up stuff to do. It was so final.
Yes.
And so that was, I felt like I was reliving it again. So I think when you're, because grief really comes on its own.
Hmm.
It brings a whole mix of emotions. And, you know, when I said sitting with that and giving yourself permission to sit with those emotions can be very uncomfortable, but it is better than quashing it down and then having to deal with it later down the track. And I say that very, openly because it's not easy. And I've done it myself in the sense of I've pushed it down. I've done everything I can to avoid it. I've done everything I can to just go, oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Hmm.
I'm a mum of two, just do what I need to do. But it all comes back at some stage. It'll come back to bite you at some stage, and you need to be able to sit with that. And that's the biggest thing is giving space to those emotions, I think.
Yes, it is. And it's just so much and so much at once,
Yeah,
as you said. And there is no linear way. There is like, the one day you can just be exhausted and completely sad. Then the next day you
yeah,
can just all of a sudden be angry. And then again, then you can just be sad. It seems like there's a lot of shifts, ups and downs,
there
and you
is.
never know what's going to show up.
Yeah.
And it is the difficulty way of dealing with it in a healthy way because it's absolutely normal if you want to sleep longer than
Hmm.
normal, like sleep more or harder to work. I mean, I know
Yeah.
after a month after my mom, I had to go back to work and I was just like drained. And also your sleep patterns can change too. You can be in
Yeah.
shock. I
Yeah.
remember my brain, I couldn't register in my brain like, hey, you need to go to sleep, Tanya, but I wouldn't sleep. The body is such in shock that it doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
So
And
there's
that's a
just
very,
so
very valid
much.
point. It is so, so
Yeah.
valid because your brain is so used to having that person in your life.
Hmm.
I mean, you've probably seen and heard and watched things, and there's many books on this, and it's proven that your brain is rewired when you lose someone, your brain is rewiring itself in order to try and cope without that person because you've had them for so long. The natural reaction is they're there, but they're not
Hmm.
anymore, and so your brain's having to rewire itself, and that can take a long time. And people are so hard on themselves that, they think that the first year is the hardest, but actually sometimes the second year is even harder. And,
Hmm.
your brain is still learning to live without that person. You can't just pick up the phone and call them anymore. You can't just,
Hmm.
all of the things that you used to do with that person are just not there anymore. And so your brain, it's like learning anything, it's like learning a
Hmm.
new language. You can't
Yes.
do it. You just can't do it because your brain's not used to it. You're not you are rewiring. Your neurons are rewiring, and that's a real fact. And I don't think a lot of
Yes.
people give themselves credit enough to know that it's okay.
Hmm.
That situation and scenario is very normal. It is very, very normal.
That is so true. I like that. Your neurons are rewiring because it's this person you're used to talking to,
Hmm.
seeing, going over the phone, whether you live with them or not. And another point that I love that you shared is like loss happening again. Like you said, after a year, you had to go take care of the estate. It's like going through grief back to step one,
Hmm.
like the first initial loss. That is so true. And many people
Hmm.
can relate to that.
Hmm.
And like for me being a caregiver for 3 years, because she had a terminal illness,
Yeah.
that's an initial grief. And it made me think
Yeah.
of you as how like, okay, you're experiencing grief over and over. So you're kind of going through the grief.
Hmm.
Going through the
Yeah.
illness is a grief in itself.
It is. It's
Even
anticipatory grief. Yeah,
yes,
that's what we call that. It's basically, I mean, you're anticipating it, and then you have to go through it again when you actually lose them. It's
yes.
because you're anticipating all this, you're preparing yourself for this person not being around anymore. But then, of course, when they're gone, it's still grief. It's still a
Yes.
struggle. Yeah,
And
and
people
caregiving is
understand.
very difficult.
Yeah, and people who understand, I'm sure a lot of people, is you can never prepare for grief.
Oh, heck no.
And I would even tell myself as a caregiver, I would say, Tanya, the real grief, even though this is grief in itself, hasn't happened. Wait till that point before you lose. You need your energy. You need yourself to be the caregiver that you are. You need your strength. So I would have to keep reminding myself when the finality comes and you have to go through, just as
Mm,
you say, and then taking care of things like as you did in
mm,
your situation. So it's almost like over and over and over, and you're thinking, oh my gosh.
hmm
So yes, you're absolutely right about it. It can feel like you're going back to step one.
hmm
And
Yeah, which is why it's not linear in any sense of the imagination.
it's not, and going
No.
through other losses.
hmm
So another thing, why is it important? Because I know there's many people that go through that. They're like, okay, when I lose my whoever it is, my loved one, spouse, parent, sibling, child, they try to make these really big, major decisions. Okay, I'm moving. I'm not staying in that house.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was with that house. Oh, I'm quitting my job. That was the job I had with this person. I'm going to give away belongings quickly. I mean, that happened to me, and I know it happens to a lot of people.
Mm,
How
yeah.
can you say, no, I got to sit back? My mind is not equipped to make those decisions right now.
Yeah. And that's not easy to do either. That's,
Hmm.
and if I went back now and I looked at decisions I made when I lost each of my family members, I think, oh my gosh, there are certain times where I have regret of things that I should have done differently or I wish I'd done differently. And obviously I'm in a situation now where I can give advice and tell people if it's not urgent and you don't need to make a decision about it or anything that's in relation to your lost loved one right there and then wait,
Hmm.
you know, wait. Give yourself permission to pause until your body and heart feel more grounded because quite honestly, there are decisions I made and I can't take them back, but there are certain things that happened, like for example, when my brother died, it was very sudden, obviously, and it was a shock. And I got a phone call 11 o'clock at night in the UK, and all I get is my brother's died. I don't know any information around it. And I wake up the next morning, not that I slept anything at all, to be honest, but I get to the next morning, and already by that point, um, his fiance had already made the decision to remove his body and have it taken back to their home because my brother died in a hotel room. Um, and they just went ahead and made all the decisions without me. And I was the only sort of Copus Mentis family member that was able to make those decisions because my father was in palliative care at that point.
Hmm.
And so, well, not palliative care, but he was in a home. And so I was I was the next of kin. So technically, you would think that I would have a say in any of this, that where, I might have wanted an autopsy,
Hmm.
which I think I did. I really did want to know what the actual cause was. The doctor signed it off as cardiac arrest, but I will never actually know what the underlying cause was or what actually caused that. And
Hmm.
so that for me was almost one of those decisions where I wish I'd stepped in more.
Yes.
Um, I had, but I was in so much shock that
Yes.
I didn't know what to do. I guess I just accepted the fact that, and I didn't think that my sister-in-law would go and do that. I just kind of assumed that, yeah, I guess I just didn't think about it. And so that, we go into this fight and flight mode and survival mode, and that is not the time to be making decisions.
Hmm.
Yes, we have to do things like funerals and things like that, but that is the bare minimum.
Hmm.
And quite often, obviously, and if you have a will, if your loved one has a will, then obviously it'll be stated in there what they wanted and their wishes and things like that. Or if you've talked about and had that conversation or been able to have that conversation with them prior. But these are things like the bare minimum. If there is anything major life decision related, I'd strongly encourage to wait. Don't go selling houses. Don't go making completely random decisions about big life altering moments. It is just not the right time. Your brain is not functioning the way it should be. You're not in the right state of mind. And that is might be a really hard thing to do at the time, but it is honestly the best decision you might make by doing nothing. Just wait, give it some time, surround yourself with people that you trust and can carry you through that moment, and but just wait to make any major decisions. I would, that's my advice.
Yes, and it is actually it is very sound advice because otherwise people are basing their decisions on heavy emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, huge. It can just be acting out of anger at the moment, and as you
Hmm.
said, regretting something later,
Yeah.
or thinking like, oh, I'm going to be able to handle my grief better if I do this. No, whether you're traveling somewhere or saying like, I need a break, I need to remove myself from this house, this is where I was from my loved one, that grief follows you everywhere you go. you know
Mm.
Wherever
Yeah.
it is, it's with you, it's within you, so you
Yeah.
can't, sorry to say, you
Yeah.
can't escape it. So whatever decision, you're right, give it that
It's
time to kind of
Yeah, just give it space. And that's,
cool.
there are certain things I wish I'd kept of my mum's as well that I just let go because I thought, oh gosh, I'm never going to want that. But there, to this day, I think, oh heck, now I would really love that.
Hmm.
And I don't have a lot of things with my brothers because I never really was in the space or the mind to think about it. And I regret that in some ways. So yeah, there's little things like that that I think it's proof that you really aren't thinking in the right space of mind but that's normal. We're all human,
That is normal.
it's a
A
normal
lot of
reaction.
people do that. That's why we have these conversations when people hear it about, like, oh, that's maybe if this happens to me, maybe I should wait, or
Yeah,
having these conversations of people that have been through it, or
yeah,
from a grief coach. And so this leads on to another important question is what happens when someone's grieving? A lot of people, they still have to go. They have to still keep going. People have
yeah,
jobs, they got to continue working, they got to pay those bills. They have to still be a support to, whether they have kids or a sibling or another parent, they still have to be an anchor to someone else. It's
mm,
funny, it's like they're the ones that need that anchor, but they're the ones that have to be there for someone else.
yeah,
How difficult can that be while they're going through that deep hurt? Like, hey, I got to go
mm,
through my job, I got to be here for so and so, but I'm in pain too. So how
hmm.
do they find that balance to be able to function?
I mean, I think it would be a perfect world if we could find that balance, but I don't
Oh,
think it's reality. I kind
mm-hmm,
of, yeah, and I know I've been through it and I've had to, I had to go back to work 5 weeks after my mum. Well, to be honest, I was going back to work 2 weeks after, and that was my first experience of real deep loss. But I just, I think this goes back to my point before about how some people wear their grief too well. And they go back to work, and that everyone from an outside, it looks like they're okay.
mm-hmm,
They're kind of everyone else just kind of assumes, oh, they're just, it looks like they're coping, which is actually pretty much not, 99% of the time is actually not the case. Um, and I think anything that you can do to surround yourself with help and support mechanisms, tools to help you through that time. It won't be an immediate fix, but it gives you that support level that you need in order to have some coping mechanisms and things like counseling, whether that be local grief groups that you can search out, Facebook groups relating to grief, and being able just to, find out if there's someone in your local area that has a similar experience,
mm-hmm,
or that you can have coffee with, or church groups, those kind of things. That it's not an immediate fix because not everything will be your thing, but I think you have to try. And, if you don't it's always difficult because some people don't have the support network. And, I was very fortunate in a sense that I had amazing friends. I have a family network in the UK. I've just always been very good at surrounding myself with friends and people that I love, but
Mhm.
not everyone's like that. And not everyone, like we've said before, will respond in the way that you expect them to either.
Yes.
So I think if you take bits of, things from different areas and just build yourself a little bit of a cocoon in a way that enables you to cope a little bit better, and doing things like, it might sound a bit cliche, but looking after yourself is a big key element of getting
Mhm.
through your grief. Eating well, getting the sleep you need, which obviously is easier said than done. I
Oh,
get
yeah.
that. I've been there and done
That's
that.
true. That's true.
Totally relate to that. Exercise, breathing exercises, whatever that might be, listening to meditation, it's a whole holistic approach, and something I wish I'd been able to do when I first experienced grief, but it's been a learning journey for me. And I don't do it all the time now, still, I put my hands up. But in those moments where I know I'm going into a bit of a cycle,
Mhm.
these are the sorts of things. I'm a big exercise person, and it has helped me massively to get to the point where I am now. It has been a lifesaver for me. I've always been a big fitness person anyway,
Mhm.
but now especially, I know that if I don't do that, there are chances that I might just go a little bit spiraling again and go off track. And so I make an effort to keep that up. My weekly exercise routine pretty much looks the same. So yeah, those sorts of things I would recommend. But like I say, it's holistic, and it has to be little bits and pieces that you find, and you have to find your way through that.
Yes, and I love how you shared like exercise and movement. That's so important because not only the mind, you're going through a lot of pain in the mind, the body can feel
Yeah,
weak,
yeah,
weaker, heavier, and depending also on your loss. Like when I was a caregiver, and for any people that are listening that are caregivers and lost their loved ones, you do get aches while you're a caregiver. I
hmm,
mean, I got my whole body was aching just from being a care, and the grief can add
yeah,
the body aches, maybe
yeah,
I got frozen shoulder, wrist aches. So I love how you suggested movement. God,
yeah.
does the body need movement during grief? And just curious, what were you doing?
Um,
Walking?
Combination of things. Pilates. At the moment now, I do a lot of strength training and Pilates, machine
Uh-huh.
Pilates. Previously, I've done, walking has always been a big thing for
Oh,
me.
yes.
Walking in nature, especially, and that connects me a lot with my childhood as well, because I have very good memories of, childhood walks with my dad, especially, and it just takes me back a little bit to my roots. And sometimes it's a little bit sad too, but I always do it for him in a sense, thinking that he's watching me. And
Hmm.
and that just gives me a little bit of peace of mind too. So it's such a healthy thing to. I mean, sometimes people will do things like boxing because it lets out the anger, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
good. There's nothing wrong with that either. We go through these anger periods where we're just so frustrated, like, why did this happen to me? Why did I,
Hmm.
why me? All of these
Yes.
things. And anger is a real, emotion during grief. And, the body holds our grief.
Hmm.
And, it's quite common. And I don't know if you've ever read this, but our body kind of emanates what we are feeling. And, if you hold these sorts of things in and our body reacts to it, our body quite often makes us sick or makes us react in a way that we wouldn't normally because we're holding on to all of these things. And something like exercise actually helps release all of that. And eating right and sleep and all of these things and breathing properly and, doing breathing, even if it's just 5 minutes when you wake up in the morning to
Hmm.
breathe, go at least get some light first thing in the morning. Don't go to social media. Don't go to anything. And that's another thing too. Don't go anywhere near anything sad when it comes to news reels
Oh,
or anything
no.
like that. Stay away from it. Honestly, take it off your phone, take your news things off your
Yes.
phone if you have to, because it just increases your chances of depression and sadness. It is not nice.
Thanks.
And in your moment
Thanks
of
for
all of
mentioning
this,
that.
because it's important. And I still do it. I'm still guilty of doing it because there are certain things I have to keep an eye on my social media, obviously, because I have a, really big community on social media. So I'm
Yeah.
obviously on there a lot. And even I struggle still now when I see all this sadness in the world and all these
Oh,
things going on, it triggers me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you are going through grief, you do not need that.
not
You
just
do not.
you. For me, it's constantly.
Yeah,
Yes, I get
it is. It's
it.
constant. It's that noise. It is that
Uh-huh.
noise that you need to switch off. So if that's one thing that can help you, take off your news things off your apps off your phone. Just do it. Or social media. Don't look at it. Certainly don't look at it first thing in the morning. Um, these things set us up for the day, as we all know. So, if you can do some breathing for 5 minutes in the morning, then that's a good start to your day. Stretches, breathing. Yeah, it's a minimal thing to do.
Well, those are very good suggestions. And especially when you said minimize news, social media when you're going through grief.
Yeah.
I don't know when I did this. Maybe it was in the beginning stages of grief or during caregiving time. Before I go to work, I would always watch the morning news, whatever, 10, 15 minutes. I think I started watching cartoons. No, I'm
Hey,
serious.
whatever makes you work, whatever
I
makes you
can't, I
laugh.
can't remember if it was during my caregiving, but there was a point when I woke up. I said, I can't deal with news anymore. It's too heavy right now what I'm going
Yeah,
through.
that's the thing. It's heavy.
And maybe it
Even
was
watching
during caregiving.
shows.
Yeah, I was watching cartoons and
Yeah,
then,
but other things like even watching shows, like I was watching things like Grey's Anatomy when I was going through my grief. I'm like, that is the worst thing you can do
oh,
in the
oh yeah.
world. Like, even my therapist, she's like, well, maybe you might want to park that for later.
Oh,
Like,
I don't know how
yeah.
you did that. Yeah, that would
Well,
scare me.
clearly it wasn't good for me.
Yeah, that would terrify me because I was
Mm,
dealing with medical community. It was horrible for 3 years.
mm.
That's a story in itself.
Oh,
And for me to watch Grace, I would be like, oh, get me away from anything that has to do with medicine.
yeah,
So I can
yeah.
see how that impacted you. Yeah,
Hmm.
something a
Yeah,
little more uplifting, like sitcoms.
yeah,
So that was good advice. Like,
yeah.
hey, is there a favorite sitcom you had or that
Mm,
you can watch again? That
yeah,
really helps.
absolutely. Something
Because
that brings joy.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for those suggestions. And even though you've provided so much good information, Maura, is there some final words of wisdom? It's funny, I should ask you that. You've already shared so much. Or comfort. It's like, should I ask this question
Yeah,
about
sure.
about grief that you want to leave for listeners?
I think the biggest thing, and I don't know if I've mentioned things like sit with your grief, but I think Sheryl Sandberg said it in a very good light was that, leaning in and just lean into your grief. And I think it's very valid in the sense that, it's we can't plan for these things and we can't predict what's going to be the future when it comes to our family. I didn't know that I was going to be effectively an orphan by the time I was 42, and that was my journey and is my journey,
Mhm.
I should say. And so, I've had to lean into that by creating a life for myself that is very different from what I would have liked to have been. And I've had to lean into that because life is short, as we know. And I don't want to spend the next however many decades I've got left dwelling on what might have been. Could I have changed anything? Could I have done anything differently? I think I've done all of that over the last 10 years. And now it's time, creating Grief Span was me leaning into the fact that I have been through a lot, yes, but I can help others get
Mhm.
through their grief. And I think that's probably my biggest message actually is just leaning in because you never know where it might take you. And I don't think Grief Span was anything anywhere near my thought process had I, if I'm being completely honest, when I first lost my mum, even if I'd lost my brother, I wouldn't have thought about doing this. But it was something after I lost my dad that I just kind of got to a point where I need to do something that's not just me wallowing in my grief. And, I've always wanted to help people. And this kind of spoke to me, and I thought, what have I got to lose by trying it and doing it and getting my qualifications? And so I just did it, and I just leant into it. So yeah, I think if that's my probably my biggest tip for anybody going through this journey is that, and also that you can have joy and grief can coexist. They can coexist.
Mm-hmm.
Your grief, you learn to live around your grief. I think a lot of people would have seen that model now where, the ball in the middle and then the jar, and the it's the jar that gets bigger around the ball, and you learn to live around your grief. It's not something that will ever go away, but you learn to, have moments of joy, and those moments of joy will be more often as you go through your grief journey. And that's okay. And that's nothing to feel guilty about either, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to feel guilty about living joy and having happiness in your life, even though you've got this enormous grief sitting in the background. And that's okay, because you will never get rid of that. It will never go away. But be happy for,
Mm-hmm.
allow yourself to be happy and enjoy what you've got left of your life, because, you know, what up, what is the other option really? At the end of the day, why hold yourself back when you could actually share your story and help others? Or you don't have to help others, but you could share your story. I've got two books that I've contributed to now. I'm a co-author. I've shared my story. I do a lot of articles, I do a lot of podcasts, I share my story, and it's helped me immensely.
Mm-hmm.
I've lent into my grief, is basically what I'm getting to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I always find it's just so like amazing that people like you using your story or your journey, like in this case, grief, and using that to help others because your clients obviously going to relate to you more because you've been through it. So there's some authenticity to that, which I love.
Mm, hmm.
And by the way, you're not, I had to mention this, you are not an orphan. You are always your parents' child. Because when you said that orphan, I was going to
Yeah.
say, no,
No,
you're never, or because I even,
yeah, I love that.
because I think that to myself too. And I'm like, no, Tanya, you're not an orphan. You're always your parents.
That's so
So
true. That's so
yeah,
true. It's such a lovely point to make, because it is
yeah,
so true. And I still consider they're not here in body. That's all.
yes,
They're here in soul, as far as I'm concerned. Their presence is very much still here with me, and they're just not here physically. And that means I'm still their daughter. And,
yes.
I think if I can finish on one thing, there was something I saw recently about specifically around mothers losing their children, and infant loss and baby loss and things like that. And I think it was Mylene Klaas on a podcast. I saw her talking about how all of those previous babies that they hold, and I can't remember the specific technical term for it now off the top of my head, but any babies that have come after that, before after you've lost babies, and all of the cells are still remaining in those living children of the ones
Mm-hmm.
that lost beforehand. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so, I think, it sends shivers down my spine. I'm like, it's so magical to think that, I'm carrying cells of my mum, or, and it makes me feel that it gives whatever makes you feel good
Mm-hmm.
and better about the situation that you're in, hold on to it.
Yes,
Hold on to it, because it's so nice to think about things like that, because we're all part of whatever in this universe, doing what we need to do. And, for that little thing to be a reality of the cells that we have, I still hold cells of my mum, and vice versa.
mm-hmm.
She had, I just makes me want to tear up a little bit. Sorry.
Oh my
Um,
God, I love it. You know why? It's funny you share things that have went through my mind. I don't know when that went through my mind. I think I mentioned it to my sister. I said the same thing as you did. I don't know how, but I don't know what words I used. I said, "Oh,
yeah.
she's still within me,"
Hmm.
or as you said, cells. Yeah, still within. And then
Hmm.
those moments where I get out of hand. When I get out of hand, when I get a little angry, when I get a little
Yeah.
testy, when I get a little bit like, oh, I don't want to do this, oh, I hate this, oh, I'm just kind of get out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Then I tried to bring myself down, and I was like saying, wait a minute, I don't think your mom wants you to see you like this. She was very, I mean, very, not judgmental, but very outspoken person, my mom, very
Yeah.
outspoken, outgoing, over the
Mm-hmm.
top. I'm a little bit down here. She was here. And I was like, I don't think she would want to see you being like, oh, I'm angry. I'm depressed. I'm this. I'm that.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So seeing within you. And I'm like thinking, what kind of a person was she? She was a very kind person, very generous to people.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not feeling that at that moment, but you need to get that back within you instead of
Mm-hmm.
feeling angry and depressed, because I went through those years of being severely depressed. I was just,
Mm.
I mean, not because of her. There was so many other, it was like a domino effect. It kind of like
Yeah.
started with one thing, then another, then another, then another, then another, then another, until I crashed. I'm like, okay, but
Mm-hmm.
now I'm back up.
Yeah.
I call it a crash, but now so I love
It's
how you said
complicated.
with it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. After
Yeah.
my crash, I was like, okay, now it's time to work myself back up. And just like
Yeah.
you've probably experienced that and then work yourself back up. And then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm here to help people. And I love what you do.
And likewise too, you've done it too. So yeah, I admire that.
Yeah, and Maura, I want you to please share your website and your social media feed, and I'm going to have your information also in the description.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I have a Instagram community called Grief Education, and which is quite large now. It was just such a pleasure to be able to know that so many people needed that service, and I'm blessed to have so many on there now. And my website is griefspan.com. I also have it's on Facebook as well. So whatever I put on Instagram goes to Griefspan Education on Facebook as well. But yeah, so Griefspan, and that was a result of my dad's story as well, because him and I created a company together called Timespan.
Mhm.
And when I was a teenager, and we did a project together through this company called Timespan, and it was all about sort of, um, historical stories and life stories and things that my dad used to write because he was a big journaler. And he called it Timespan. And so the natural progression for me when I created Griefspan was Griefspan after Timespan. So yeah, it has a big meaning in my heart for the name as well. So there's a little story behind there too.
Yeah, so that's another example of still carrying them with you in your mission, what you're doing in
Yeah,
this world, which is amazing.
absolutely.
And I do definitely have to give a huge thank you again for saying yes for this
Oh no,
interview.
my
I really
pleasure.
appreciate it because I was like, I wanted to, I was looking for experts like grief coach because I was like, oh, this is a good topic. And I'm like, oh, I hope Mara, I'm pronouncing it, Moira
Yeah.
says yes. And so thank you.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad you reached out. I'm so, so pleased. I always think there's a reason for everything. And yeah, I'm a big believer in that. So I'm grateful that you popped into my inbox.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Because that's always kind of like hard. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sending this email. Let's see.
No,
Hopefully it's well
no.
taken. So thank
No,
you.
I love sharing my story, and this is what I love about this whole field as well, is that I've
Mhm.
learned so much from other people and met some incredible people in this space, which I didn't know existed, by the way.
Yes.
Until I started Grief Span. I had no idea the grief community was actually so big. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Good. Thank you again.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.